Hello there.
Hey, how you doing?
How are you? Are you able to get your camera
Yeah,
switched on?
let me get that going.
Yeah.
Boom. All right, perfect. I
Hey,
was not living up to my first Gen Z designation there. But
it's so nice to meet you virtually. Thank you for having me so we can, talk about the EpiPen Act. I've been very excited about it ever since the news broke that you introduced that to Congress.
well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I think it's something that and it's interesting because can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. It's interesting because I've had allergies my whole life. I mean, it's been a huge defining moment of my life, and I'll talk more about my story later. And I didn't know there was this whole allergy community out there. And until I started working on this bill, introduced this bill, and just kind of, now, and I wish I would have known about it before. Maybe I would have learned some lessons that would have helped me a lot. So, either way.
Absolutely. So, if you don't mind me asking, because this is something that I do with my patients all the time. I just want to learn a little bit more about you, your story, living with food allergies, what you're allergic to, what were reactions like in the past, and I heard that you had to use an expired EpiPen at one point. I want to hear about that because I think that's really important for people to understand because many people on social media they see reactions and they don't really understand what that's about. So, I'd love to hear from you what
Yep.
that's about.
No, of course. So I like I said, I've had allergies my whole life. I really my parents didn't know until they gave me a peanut butter cookie when I was a kid, and that's when we found out. I have many different allergies, and growing up, as an allergy kid, it's funny because I hate chocolate. And I actually blame my parents because growing up they told me I was allergic to chocolate even though I wasn't because there were so many chocolate bars that also had nuts and so they just wanted to be careful. When I tried it for the first time when I was 12, I was like, ugh. And now as I think back, I'm like, did they subconsciously make me not like chocolate? I don't know. But either way, um, and for me, like I always, was able to take care of my allergies, always had my bay. I never carried my EpiPen on my person for like a lot of allergy folks. I had a lot of expired EpiPens, maybe one in my house, but didn't really carry it around with me. And I went to a potluck, and this is kind of the moment that really changed my life. It was about 6 years ago. I went to a potluck and, I gave my announcement. I have XX and X allergies. Let me know if anything has it. No one really said anything, but sometimes you can look at a food and just kind of tell you're allergic to it.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of felt that way about most of the food there. So there was a cheese pizza, and I was like, let me just stick to the cheese pizza. It's a very safe food for my allergies. And so I ate a bunch of it. It was really good. And then halfway through the dinner, I, talked with the guy who brought it, and I say, "Man, that pizza was great. What's in it?" It was about 10 minutes after eating it, and he goes, "Oh, it's a family recipe. It goes way back. We actually bake almonds into the crust of the pizza."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like I gave my announcement earlier. He didn't say anything, or maybe he was talking, and so I start freaking out. My anxiety shoots up, and I actually start. I think up until then I didn't really look. I wasn't looking down. I looked down. I have all these hives, so I go into my backpack. I grab some Benadryls. I go to my car. I grab my EpiPen, and then I go straight to the bathroom and I close the door. And I haven't told anybody what's going on yet because as once I use the EpiPen, the night's over. So I'm, I go to the bathroom and I'm just looking at myself in the mirror, and it's the first time, kind of more as an adult. I think it was like 22 or something, 21, that I start seeing my face really break out, my lips break out. My hives start, and I start feeling my throat close. I took like two or three Benadryls as soon as he told me that, and so I was hoping the Benadryls would be enough. And then it really started to close a lot, and I started wheezing. I had trouble breathing, so I ran out of the bathroom, and I tell everyone, what's going on. I had nuts. I'm about to use the EpiPen. I'm pretty sure my throat is closing. I'm waiting until I really know I have to use it. Because the problem was because I didn't have extensive, like I knew how to use the EpiPen, but I didn't know what to feel for, and I didn't want to use it if I didn't need to. So I made a mistake and I waited too long, and I told everyone, please call 911. I'm gonna use it here in a second, I think. And I was just waiting and waiting for that Benadryl to kick in, and then my throat completely closes, and I start choking, or not choking, but I start uh, um, suffocating. I'm like I can't breathe fully.
Right.
I could like I was just like a little bit like if someone put something over my mouth, I could just breathe a little bit. And so then I hit the EpiPen, and there was some sort of delayed reaction. It didn't work right away. And it felt like a long time, but it was like maybe 8 or 10 seconds. But for like 8 or 10 seconds, I had no air coming in, and it was it felt like minutes. But then it kicked in. My throat opened up a little bit, and that's when the EMTs rushed in and brought me to the hospital where I had a secondary reaction. And then they had to put another round of epinephrine in me. And just the whole experience really changed my life. I never dealt with panic disorder, anxiety, none of that my whole life, to be honest. I was always a very hyper kid and, and all that. But I never dealt with a lot of these issues. And that whole thing changed my life. I remember specifically sitting on the bed of the hospital, being having Benadryl going through my IV, and then at the same time having that second round of epinephrine, and I started kind of shaking when I got that second round of epinephrine. And it was a weird feeling because Benadryl had me very tired and like subdued, but then the epinephrine kicking in, it was just a feeling it's hard to explain, and it was very traumatic. And after that, for about a year, I developed a eating disorder, and this is the part that I really like to talk about with people because it's not just the allergy attack; it's things that come after. And because I felt so safe in that space eating cheese pizza, I think it really did a number. It did a number to me mentally. I developed an eating disorder. I would end up calling the ambulance 6 times in the course of just 2 months, eating at restaurants or eating at home because I had these like phantom pains. Like I went to Chipotle and had a burrito. There's no nuts in Chipotle. I have no allergens in Chipotle, but I took a bite and I told my friends like I'm dying. I'm having anaphylaxis. I don't have my EpiPen. We need to call the ambulance. Or no, I had my EpiPen, but we need to call the ambulance. And there was 6 times I went to the hospital and there was nothing wrong, but it was that panic disorder. I lost a lot of weight in that year because I started skipping meals because I was scared to eat. And it wasn't until like I took my mental health more seriously and went to a psychiatrist and a therapist and started getting a hold of it. And now I'm a lot better. But for about 3 or 4 years there, I really dealt with eating problems in a very serious way. It was horrible for a year. I got better after that, but it really changed the course of my life. Now I still randomly will have a panic attack when I eat. It's very rare now. But now I deal with panic disorder and these different things that really stem from that cheese pizza. And so now my rule is I don't eat unless I have my EpiPen with me. I won't eat anything. I won't drink anything unless it's water, unless I have my EpiPen with me and I bring it with me everywhere.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that story. I know it's hard to relive something that's so scary like that. That's a potentially life-threatening experience when you can't breathe. And I'm seeing comments here of people saying this is so relatable. A lot of people, there are millions of people living with food allergies, and I see people like you on a regular basis who have these types of near-death experiences, these severe allergic reactions, not knowing what to do. And when you don't experience that on a regular basis, or it's the first time, you're not necessarily have all the knowledge at your fingertips to deal with it. So the feelings that you had of not knowing when to use this device, that's completely normal. And so the education is so important to talk about that on a regular basis. But as we're here today to talk about is the challenge of getting access to a device like this. So I want to hear more about what inspired you to introduce the EPIPEN Act, and tell us a little bit more about what that actually is and how that can help people.
Well, beyond my specific story, I started hearing a lot from constituents when I would speak openly about my problem and what happened to me. And we started receiving a lot of stories from constituents, folks talking about it. And honestly, stories from constituents is oftentimes kind of jumpstarts us thinking about legislation. And on top of that, I know personally a lot about the cost of EpiPen. I've been a kid that's always needed them. And just some facts and figures for folks, between the years 2008 and 2016, the brand EpiPen increased their cost from between $94 to over $600. And under high deductible plans, which is more and more common for folks in this country. The average cost can be over $200 for these auto injectors that are life saving. And so we knew that as these devices would cost more, there'd be more inequities in who can have one. And after seeing action at the state level in places like Colorado, where they capped the cost of EpiPens, we thought, hey, why don't we introduce a bill to do the same thing federally to help people who have private insurance, because this is something that needs to be dealt with. And so that's why we did it.
Yeah, I mean that is something that I'm hearing from a lot of people who follow me, from my patients. I've had several experiences where patients are afraid to use their epinephrine auto-injector because they just filled it. They had to pay $300 for it, and they know that if they use it, they're going to have to refill it, pay it again. So then they sit there and wonder and wonder. And just like with your story, the longer you wait to use epinephrine, the more likely you could have severe consequences. Whether it is a secondary reaction like you had, we call that biphasic anaphylaxis, where you have to use multiple rounds of epinephrine, or potentially develop shock. The whole point of epinephrine is to make sure that the blood flows back to the vital organs as your body is stopping that allergic reaction. Benadryl does not treat anaphylaxis effectively. And until we get an alternative medication, this is all we've got. Or, the competitor, or even with generics, I find people are still paying $150 in my community, even for a generic. Some people have great insurance, but most insurance is going towards these high deductible plans. So we're still seeing people complaining about having to pay $700 for a twin pack. And if you've got a family with 2 people with food allergies, or they're in school and they have to use a device at home or at daycare or school and carry multiple boxes, that's thousands of dollars a year that people are having to pay. So to have a law where we're going to cap it at $60 a twin pack would be a huge cost savings for millions of people across the country, not just in places like Colorado. I'm in Illinois, and our EpiPen cap is going to go into effect next year. But that needs to happen everywhere. I agree with you. We need to get that to go everywhere.
100%. And we feel like $60 for a 2-pack is the right place to be. And the thing is, there are so many folks who their plans don't really kick in with the better pricing until they've almost died. And this is actually what happened to me. We were paying a lot higher costs for our EpiPens. After I went through that, and I got out of the hospital. That is when my at the time I was under my mother's health insurance plan. Put us in a place where we could actually go buy them for $10 a pop. But that didn't become unlocked until I almost died due to it. And I know everyone's on different plans, but we believe $60 for a 2-pack is fine. And in actuality, it should be a lot less, right? Because these are not that expensive to make, but we thought this would be a good place at least to start. And the fact of the matter is, and this more than anyone too, is the pharmaceutical company, the markups are just very insane and intense. And I just think, especially in this country where we have so many resources, I believe being healthy should be a human right for all of our people, no matter how much you make. And access to life-saving medication like an epinephrine auto-injector is really important. I have a question, though, not to go out of order, but you just showed something else I've never seen before.
This?
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Yeah. So this is the classic EpiPen. It's a little bit different for something like this called Auvi-Q. So it's interesting that you told me the timeline of your story. So part of the reason why the markups happen with EpiPen so much is that this was introduced as a competitor to EpiPen. And what's nice about this device is it actually talks to you. So when I open it up, this is a trainer.
Contains no needle or drug and is for training.
And so the difference, you'll see the safety. This is opposite to the needle. The needle and the safety are on the same side. So when I open this, black end against outer thigh,
Push firmly until you hit 2.
it counts down for you too.
So it's still an auto injector, but it's like electric or something?
Yeah, it's an auto injector that has a chip in there with sound that will just talk to you to walk you through the entire process. And you can tell there's also a size difference too. So for people who aren't carrying any bags. It's easier to put this in your pocket,
Yeah.
which I like about it. And so there was a recall a little while ago that when this went off the market because it was having some faulty injections, this had a monopoly essentially, and that started that pathway of it going up to the hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And then when this came back, I was able to give this out basically for free for patients for about a year. Then it got to like a $25 copay. Now it's basically similar pricing where this is still hundreds of dollars. So last year, a lot of people are asking me, well, Dr. Rubin, what are you going to prescribe your patients? And I say, what is your insurance going to give you the cheapest one? That's at this point all I care about, because at the end of the day, it's still epinephrine, and it's the same dose. We have this in 0.15 and 0.3 milligrams. This one actually comes in a 0.1 milligram for babies, but insurance will never cover more than one box. So if you got a baby in daycare, you have to ship that box with you everywhere, which is really, really annoying. So there are other generics, but even then, like we mentioned earlier, it could be $100, $150 when these devices only cost about $30, $35 to make. So I do agree that the price point of $60 seems reasonable for most people to try to improve access to this medication. Do you have any specific stories from other people that you have heard of and your constituents who have had struggles with getting their epinephrine auto-injectors?
Yeah, I actually had one constituent who reached out after I kind of was talking about my story. And the really sad part about this is she works in healthcare. She's a nurse. And so she works in healthcare. She knows that she needs to have her auto-injector with her. But because of the cost, she couldn't afford it. And so she had a expired one that she would kind of bring with her everywhere. And sometimes you leave it at home on accident, and then you're at work, and different things like that. And obviously being a nurse, she was always on her feet. And so it created this situation where she's taking care of people, saving people's lives, etc., but couldn't have it herself. But the fact that she worked in healthcare and couldn't afford an EpiPen really spoke to me. Not a specific one, but one of the most common stories we heard were actually from parents with children in school who said that they couldn't afford to buy as many as they wanted. And I completely get that, especially being a member of Congress. I mean, I have, and for people who don't know, we spend half of our year in DC and half of our year at home. And so there's a lot of places that I frequent, a lot of offices and spaces, and a lot of times it's hard to carry an EpiPen with me. So I have one here, I have one at home, I have one in my different offices, and I have one in my car, etc. And so when you have kids, you want one at daycare, or you want one at the school to be there with the nurse's office. And as a lot of people know, parents really have to, at least the way it used to be, is there wasn't a EpiPen there just in case for all the students. You'd have to have one there specifically for your child. And parents want to have them in different areas, maybe at grandma's house, maybe at your house, etc., in case something happens. And they just can't afford to do that when they cost this much. And then the other one is that the fact that so many folks, especially when they have to pay that upper level, carry expired EpiPens. And so, which obviously, and correct me if I'm wrong, but lose their potency and the ability to really fully save your life if you need it. And so I remember growing up, it was very normal to have EpiPens that were expired for many years.
So unfortunately, I've moved my kind of practice. Obviously, I can't give specific medical advice on social media, but I always tell people, look at you can't see it on the trainer. You can kind of see it on the Auvi-Q too, but there's a viewfinder where you can see the medicine. You look up at the light and say, okay, is it clear and not cloudy? And if that's the case, you could use it after the expiration date. You don't know how effective it is. It's probably best to use that rather than nothing, and you call for help. If it's yellow or cloudy, it's definitely bad, and it's not going to give you any kind of efficacy at that point. So there was a point where the FDA actually increased the expiration dates when there was a bit of a shortage, and also this financial problem a few years ago, where you could probably at least 6 months after the expiration date be okay with that, but that's still not acceptable. I mean, this is a life-saving medication that expires routinely. You need to be able to improve the access for. I had made a post recently to ask people to share their stories as well, and the one that really got to me was the fact that and I'm just looking at it right now, they couldn't afford it because it was $600, and they already been through two in the year. And
Wow.
so the doctor ended up deciding to switch them instead of an auto injector to do the classic vials of epinephrine and syringes and learn how to draw up the epinephrine in a syringe
Oh my
like we're living in 1982. That's
Isn't
how it
there
used
a
to
lot
be.
more risk associated with that?
Absolutely. You have to train someone to be able to use a needle, and there's needle stick injuries, right? Chance for infection, not getting all the medicine in. If they don't draw it up correctly, there could be air bubbles, and so there can be damage. So we really don't want people doing that as much as possible. But to do a syringe with epinephrine like that, that's only going to cost like 20 to 30 bucks rather than 600 bucks. And that's unacceptable to me. And I know this is slightly off topic, but we see on airlines, they don't always carry epinephrine auto injectors on airlines. And
Yep.
hopefully with the FAA Reauthorization Act that was passed,
Yeah.
that will actually change in the next year or so, where airlines have to have auto injectors. Because, even physicians like myself, I don't draw up epinephrine at this point. We have these auto injectors. So
Yep.
if I was asked to do that on a plane while there's turbulence in a high stressful situation, I may screw up too.
Yeah.
So it's not easy for people to do, and I wouldn't want my patients to have to do that if they were at a picnic and all of a sudden they ate something that contained their allergen and they can't breathe and nobody else knows how to do it. Like they'd have to train all these other people to learn how to do it as well. That's
Exactly.
stressful all around for people.
Yeah, and so someone wrote this, but especially if you're going through anaphylaxis, which obviously you have um, the physical reaction that's going on, but at least when I went through it, it was just as intense on my mental side. I mean, I was having a massive panic attack while I was having the anaphylaxis because I was kind of waiting to see what would happen, and I couldn't imagine. The whole time I was shaking. And I couldn't imagine drawing up epinephrine and having to do that during that time. So, and it really shouldn't be expected of anybody.
Yeah, and so just to explain to some people a little bit more about anaphylaxis, because you've explained it in your experience, but to give a little bit more clinical context, anaphylaxis is the systemic allergic reaction that happens not just to food, but people can have it to bee stings, latex, medication. So this is not just an EpiPen Act for food allergy; it's for all sorts of severe allergic reactions that can occur. And the body's immune system will release a lot of chemical messengers that can show symptoms in different ways. You could have hives all over your body, be very itchy. You could have swelling in your tongue, making it hard to breathe, or your throat, closing that off. You can get wheezing in your chest and the airways close in the lower airways, making it harder to breathe. You could have profuse vomiting and diarrhea that can occur. There could be symptoms from multiple body parts that occur from different organ systems. So all of that could happen at once. And then what we worry about the most is if it progresses to shock, meaning the blood vessels in like your arms and legs open up and pool blood away from your vital organs. So in the severe cases, when we hear about on the news, unfortunately, there was an NYU doctor who passed away from a food allergic reaction recently. There was a young woman in New York who's a dancer who passed away recently from a severe reaction. When you go into shock, you could end up having heart attacks and strokes. So you could survive it, but you could have long-term disability from it. And the only way to prevent that is through epinephrine as quickly as possible. So this should always be on people who are prescribed it at all times, never in the car. You got to keep it with you because the medicine can go bad. And so I think it's important to help continue to raise awareness and to talk more about this act. What I'd like to hear from you and from our audience is how can we help support you and how can we help figure out ways to convince other members of Congress to push this bill forward to help as many millions of people as possible in this.
I appreciate the question. And really, the main thing here is sharing your story and letting your member of Congress know your story. And I said this recently at an allergy conference that it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, a Republican, Green Party, communist, it don't matter what you are, allergies impact all of us. And when you are having that anaphylactic attack, it doesn't matter what party you're registered to or who you voted for. And so we really want this bill to be a bipartisan bill, Democrats, Republicans coming together around it. And so, something I really love about the allergy community is it's a very bipartisan community. You know, I've met so many people who have many varying opinions on different issues, but we all believe in access to especially these life-saving medications and accessibility for allergies, which a lot of, it's an invisible, oftentimes kind of an invisible disability that a lot of people don't know about, and that really impacts our lives. And so sharing your story is important, and I would ask everyone to reach out to your member of Congress and share your story with them. There's definitely, there's a healthcare policy aspect to this, and we can get into the numbers with them, and we do, and that's something my office can help provide to members of Congress, et cetera. But honestly, for everybody on this call and for everybody on this live, the best thing you can share, but beyond facts and figures, is your story and the anxieties you have with not having access to this life-saving medication.
Yeah, that's really, really great. I'm really happy that you're pursuing this, and anything that you need from me, I would love to help out, because this affects, my patients, all the people, who follow me. There's just so many people who could really benefit from a law like this across the country that I really want to be able to help support you with that in any way I can.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and we need we need all the help we can get. And so I appreciate a lot of the love we're seeing there too. And we just need everyone to reach out to their members of Congress. And my hope is that we can make this bipartisan and get it over the finish line.
Absolutely. So, did you have any other questions for me?
Yeah. No, I actually do have a couple questions for you. So you kind of already explained the necessity of epinephrine. And I know you asked some of your followers to share their stories. You already brought some. Are there any other stories that you got?
Yeah, I'll go through my list. I mean, my Instagram video had like almost 200,000 views and hundreds and hundreds of comments. So you have to give me 1 second here.
Oh, no, yeah.
Give me 1 second, because it's a big list. Not many people made videos, and I wasn't able to figure out exactly how to get that done. So I talked about the one about having to use the vials.
Yeah.
1 second.
I didn't even know they still. I didn't know they prescribe that to people, like individuals.
I don't do it. I don't feel comfortable doing it, but I know some people who are a little bit older than me who still will do something like that. Somebody said, got my prescription refilled, expired in 6 months. Asked pharmacist for a newer one, said wasn't allowed to reorder until most were off the shelf. I always tell people, you got to make sure before you actually take it home with you and pay for it, look at the expiration date. It should be bare minimum. It should be 12 months. You do not want anything less than that, because it can be expensive. Somebody said, I got one prescribed. First time was $500 with insurance. Will not be getting another one. But I heard that CVS is going to have one for $150 cash next month. Somebody said, I currently don't have my pens because of the cost. Somebody said mine expired in 2017. I won't get new ones. A lot of people saying it's just because they won't buy it because of the cost.
Yeah.
Let's see here. My son has an EpiPen Junior, even though I once cried at the store when they told me the price. I haven't had one in years, kind of just praying I don't need one, or he would be enough in an emergency.
Have you ever encountered a situation where the cost has really come up as a major, as a major topic for like your patients?
Yeah, I've had significant conversations with some patients going back and forth with our food allergy action plans, our anaphylaxis action plans, where they'll say, okay, do I really need to use it in this situation because I can't afford it? Do I really need to use it when? And they really wanted to know exactly when should they be using it, because they were so scared of having to refill it. I've seen that. I once got a call. It was like 8 o'clock at night. It was a high school student looking at a college, and they had their EpiPen with them, and they were having a reaction. They were talking to me, and I knew they needed to use it. I said, look, you really have to use it. I know you're calling me, but you got to use it. And they were so scared to use it because they thought they'd have to go to the emergency room. They didn't want to have to, buy another EpiPen. They were so scared. They're like, I'm just going to ride it out with Benadryl. And I said, you're doing this against medical advice. And that happens from time to time. And it doesn't matter what community you're in. This impacts everybody. And I know that there's, more inequities in communities with a lower socioeconomic status. But I think everybody would be interested in trying to cap the cost of an epinephrine auto-injector, because that means so much more opens up for people to do. And then people don't have to worry about, getting this filled when they may be living paycheck to paycheck. This is just a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
To be able to do this.
What are some of your hopes and dreams in terms of the future for the allergy community, legislation, allergy treatments, and where do you want things to go?
Yeah, I'm very excited with where things are going. So, a law like this kind of sets the table for improving access to life-saving treatments. We are on the cusp of having a needle-free alternative for epinephrine. There's a nasal spray containing epinephrine that the FDA was going to approve last summer, but ended up asking for an additional study. We'll hear by October for something like that. We just got the first ever FDA approval for a medication to treat food allergies called omalizumab or Xolair to reduce the chances of a severe allergic reaction.
Wow.
It's a special type of medication. There are vaccines being developed for food allergy treatments. There are different.
Cure or to manage? Would it be to cure or manage?
So some of them would end up being cures. Some of them would end up being managed. But, these are years away.
Okay.
But the concepts are really interesting. We're taking medications that we already know help for specific indications. There's one that treats various allergic conditions that are there's a phase 1 clinical trial enrolling right now where they're looking at a medication already being used for severe asthma and eczema, combining that with a multiple myeloma that's a blood cancer drug to basically wipe out the cells that create these allergic reactions. So that's a theoretical cure, but if we're phase 1, that means we're just looking at safety in small populations. So it's a long way to go, several years to go. And I think because unfortunately more people have severe allergic diseases, food allergies being one of them, there's more money and research into this, more investment in this. So with that will come better treatments because we have more people invested in research, which makes me excited. It's why I'm excited to go into my clinic every day and help people, because I know we have what we have now, but we're going to have way more options in our lifetime.
Coming up. Wow, that makes me really hopeful. Is the nasal spray, so would it work kind of like a Narcan?
It's actually the device is shaped like Narcan nasal spray. It's called Nephy. Nasal epinephrine. It's kind of a funny name. And it's one spray that they actually already studied it in people who have a stuffy nose from severe allergies versus not. And the rate of absorption is pretty similar to doing an injection like this. The question will then come to what's the cost going to be, right? That's always going to be on people's minds. And so we'll see how that landscape plays out. But we definitely need to get these costs under control.
Yeah. My last question, since we're here, is do you have any further reminders for folks when it relates to epinephrine? I have a few friends in the allergy world. I was actually just with one a few weeks ago who's had allergies her whole life, and she was telling me, she's allergic to bees, and she, almost died once, but she never carries an EpiPen, in which I yelled at her and said, no, you need to get one, especially if you're allergic to bees. And I remember talking to her, and she said, yeah, well, if I ever use it, I wouldn't call 911. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I don't know. Are there any other reminders you have for folks?
Yeah. So it's always important to carry 2 of these with you at all times. Never leave it in the car because the temperature can make this degrade faster. Whenever you use this, there's a couple of things that people don't always recognize. You actually really should be laying on your back with your legs elevated, because that helps get the blood flowing back to your vital organs so that you heal more quickly. The reason why we ask people to call 911 is a few things. One is by getting an ambulance, it triages you into the emergency room more quickly rather than showing up in the waiting room. It's going to take you longer to be seen, right? So it's a triage issue. The other is that there's a small percentage of people like what you experience where you could have a secondary reaction even if you stopped eating or being exposed to the offending allergen that caused the severe allergic reaction to begin with. So that can happen a few hours later, or you may need multiple doses because maybe this didn't work because either the device was faulty for whatever reason or you didn't get enough medicine. Because in rare situations, you may need to be put on an epinephrine drip. So that's really important to make sure that you seek help as quickly as possible and to follow up with your doctor at least on a yearly basis to go over these things because it's very easy to forget how to use this, when to use this, is their plan of action, especially if you have children. Their weight changes and their dosage change. School forms are going to be needed. There may be updates in the types of treatments that could be available, or maybe you outgrew your allergic trigger and you didn't even know it. Yeah. So it's good to stay in touch with your doctor to make sure that you know what's best for your health.
Yeah, I've recently found out that, and I was reading online that I had a soy allergy my whole life, and I think I've outgrown it, which is really exciting because I love sushi, and how do you, but I'm not fully, I don't know for sure. I've had some soy sauce here and there, and it's been fine. How do you recommend folks really, if they think they've outgrown an allergy, what should you do besides having a small dose, which I guess isn't the smartest thing sometimes.
Yeah, it's best to talk with an allergist about the specific plan of action. So in some situations, we may do something called an oral food challenge, where in our clinic, in a medically supervised setting, we give small incremental doses over a couple of hours of what they're allergic to, and we watch them. That's the gold standard. You have to eat it in order to know if you're really allergic or not. And that should be under the supervision of a doctor, because if you haven't had a reaction in like 10 plus years and you haven't been checked and you're like, maybe I should try it. Well, especially for something like seafood, you're probably still allergic, and that could be a huge problem. So it's always a good idea to have your doctor kind of guide you through and figure out what is the safest way to know if you're allergic or not.
Gotcha. And my last question, actually, I just thought of one is, I've always thought that one of the most important reasons to call 911 and to get an ambulance there, EMTs there after you use the EpiPen is because the EpiPen's life-saving, but sometimes could cause other problems relating to your heart or cardiac arrests and stuff like that. Is that true?
So an epinephrine auto-injector device, it contains a small amount of epinephrine, which we naturally actually make in our body. That, when we use it, causes the heart rate to go very quickly, which you need that because that helps bring blood back to the vital organs. And so in some situations, you could have an arrhythmia, meaning a rhythm problem with the heart, to be monitored for that. That is, yes, something that we do monitor, but I don't want that to discourage people. There's really, when I think about any situation in medicine, we call things like contraindications, meaning you should never do something like this. If you suspect you have a severe allergic reaction, no matter what the situation is, you always use this. It doesn't matter if you have a heart condition, if you're on any kind of medication, you're always going to use this medicine because it's the only life-saving medication. But the risk of going into like cardiac arrest and dying from this is such an extremely low risk. It's a very safe medication.
Okay.
Overall.
And what about, sorry, this is the last one. For folks who, like me, during my situation, I didn't know, and I was waiting till the last minute to take it. And I think part of it was I was anxious that if I took it and I didn't really need it, what would happen? Is that something folks should really worry about?
I tell people not to really worry about it, that it's better to be safe than sorry. So if you're even thinking about using it, it's best to use it. Somewhat of an analogy is if somebody has a stroke, we tell people time is brain. You got to get to the hospital as quickly as possible. The faster you treat it, the less likely there's going to be problems. And that's the same with a severe allergic reaction. Epinephrine, the faster, when you use it as quickly as possible, that's going to reduce the chances of having severe problems. So that's why it's so important not to second guess yourself if you think you need to use it. And so that's why a lot of the second guessing comes down to cost and how much expense there is with seeking healthcare, with using these devices. So, just to end this, I really appreciate you introducing this bill, and I hope that the people who are listening can share this with other people. I'm going to try to download this and actually put it on social media, this whole live, and just let people be able to listen to this, because I think we had a this is a wonderful conversation that I want people to hear and share and know that this is really an important initiative that we need as many people supporting this as possible.
100%. I appreciate you and just the amazing content you put out to educate people, and together and everybody watching, I believe we'll be able to pass the EPIPEN Act, and then we'll move on from there. But thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you for this, and it was very nice to meet you. I hope we can work together in the future.
Of course.
All right. Bye, everybody.